It was a Tuesday morning at Sao Paulo International Airport when I boarded Flight 4521 bound for Rio de Janeiro. The business class cabin was packed, filled with well-dressed executives furiously typing on their laptops and entrepreneurs discussing deals on the phone while sipping champagne offered in the VIP lounge. Amidst all this corporate elegance, one figure caught my eye, and apparently everyone else's too. It was a woman of about 70, with slightly disheveled gray hair escaping from a loose bun, reading glasses dangling from the tip of her nose by a faded gold chain. She wore a navy blue wool cardigan that was clearly old but well-maintained, a pleated gray skirt that reached her knees, and comfortable, low black shoes, the kind doctors recommend for people with foot problems. The old woman carried a floral fabric bag that looked like it had seen better days, with somewhat worn straps, and a small carry-on bag that clearly didn't meet modern executive baggage standards. As she approached row 3A, right in the first-class cabin, I could hear the murmurs begin. "Do you think she made a mistake and is in the wrong seat?" whispered a blonde woman in a red pantsuit to her travel companion. "She probably bought the ticket without really knowing what she was doing," replied the other, adjusting her designer glasses while observing the elderly woman with obvious discomfort. Further back, a young executive, no older than 30, with gelled hair, an impeccable Armani suit, and a watch worth more than many people's salaries, visibly rolled his eyes. "Glad I'm not sitting next to her," he muttered to his colleague. "These people should travel in economy class, where they belong." The situation became even more awkward when the woman tried to place her carry-on bag in the overhead compartment. The bag, though small, had a somewhat irregular shape, and she clearly struggled to lift it to the required height. Instead of offering help, the surrounding passengers simply watched with a mixture of impatience and disdain. It was then that Mariana, a new flight attendant, no more than 25 years old, approached. With a forced professional smile that didn't reach her eyes, she said, "Ma'am, I believe it would be better to check that bag. It's for your convenience and safety." "But it's within the allowed size," the old woman replied softly, her calm and polite voice contrasting with the treatment she was receiving. "Yes, but—" Mariana hesitated, clearly embarrassed, but continued, "It's just that here in first class we have specific baggage standards, you see? Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable in economy class." The silence that followed was deafening. All nearby passengers stopped their conversations to watch the scene. The tension in the air was palpable. The old woman simply nodded with a gentle smile, put her bag in a smaller space under the seat, and settled into seat 3A by the window. For the next 40 minutes of the flight, she remained silent, gazing at the clouds through the window, occasionally pulling a worn book from her bag, an old copy of The Little Prince with pages yellowed by time. The other passengers gradually returned to their activities, some still casting occasional glances of curiosity or irritation in her direction. The arrogant executive even commented loudly enough for her to hear, "I don't understand how some people can afford first class without even knowing how to behave properly. She probably used her entire retirement savings for this." The old woman didn't react. She simply continued reading her book, turning the pages slowly and occasionally smiling at a passage she seemed to know by heart. It was exactly 52 minutes into the flight that everything changed. The cabin lights began to flicker erratically. A strange metallic sound echoed throughout the plane, making some passengers look up with concern. The sound of the engine seemed different, with a vibration that hadn't been there before. "Attention passengers, this is Captain Silva speaking," a voice came over the intercom, trying to remain calm but with noticeable tension. "We are experiencing a minor technical difficulty. Nothing serious, but we'll need to make an unscheduled landing in Belo Horizonte for a safety check. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened." Panic was immediate. Passengers began to stir, some shouting questions at the crew, others desperately trying to turn on their cell phones. The woman in the red pantsuit was visibly pale, clutching her companion's arm. The arrogant executive, who minutes earlier had acted like he owned the world, was now sweating cold and breathing with difficulty. The flight attendants rushed back and forth, clearly tense, trying to calm the passengers but with little success. Mariana, the same one who had embarrassed the old woman, was visibly nervous, stumbling over her words as she tried to explain safety procedures. It was in this moment of total chaos that a voice rose above all the commotion. Clear, firm, and surprisingly authoritative. "Captain Silva, this is Helena Andrade." The silence was instantaneous. All the passengers turned to look at the old woman who, until then, had been practically invisible to them. She had calmly stood up and was speaking into the cabin interphone with a completely different posture, erect, confident, commanding respect in a way no one could explain. The captain's response came almost immediately, and the tone was completely different. "Ms. Helena. My God, I didn't know you were on board. How? What are you doing here?" "Just doing one of my routine inspections, Captain." "Now tell me exactly what the technical problem is." The transformation in the cabin was instantaneous. The flight attendant stopped mid-action, looking at the woman with an expression of absolute shock. Mariana turned white as a sheet, her hands visibly trembling. "Ms. Helena," the captain's voice now came over the loudspeaker with deep respect, "we have a problem with the secondary hydraulic system. The indicators are showing a gradual pressure drop. It's not an imminent emergency, but protocol requires immediate landing for verification." "Captain Silva, how long have you been flying our Airbus A320s? 15 years, Ms. Helena. Then you know this specific model, manufactured in 2018, had a manufacturer's recall on the hydraulic pressure sensors. It's probably a false alarm. Check the auxiliary panel, position B7, and tell me the reading of the primary system." There was a pause of a few seconds before the response. "Ms. Helena, you are absolutely right. The primary system is functionally normal. It seems to be the sensors themselves." "Perfect. Proceed with the flight normally, but I want a full report on when this aircraft last had preventive maintenance on those specific sensors." "And Captain..." "Yes, Ms. Helena. I want to speak with the cabin crew when we land." The revelation dropped like a bomb on all the passengers. The executive who had spent the entire flight ridiculing the old woman now had an expression of absolute horror, as if he wanted to disappear into his own seat. His hands visibly trembled as he tried to process what had just happened. The woman in the red pantsuit whispered to her companion, "My God, she's the owner of the airline. We talked about her in front of her." Mariana, the flight attendant, seemed on the verge of a nervous collapse. She slowly approached Helena, who had calmly sat down again and returned to her book, as if nothing had happened. "Ms. Elena, E. I'm so sorry, I didn't know who you were, E." Helena looked up from her book and smiled gently. "Dear, that's exactly the point. You shouldn't treat anyone differently based on who you think they are. Good service shouldn't depend on a person's social status." "I understand, Ms. Helena. I apologize from the bottom of my heart." "I accept your apology, Mariana. But this gives us a valuable learning opportunity, don't you think?" Meanwhile, other crew members had discreetly approached. The chief purser, a man of about 50 with 25 years of experience at the company, greeted Helena with evident reverence. "Ms. Helena, it's an honor to have you with us. If we had known you were doing one of your inspections..." "Carlos," she interrupted him softly, "you've known me for almost 2 decades. You know my inspections only work if no one knows I'm here. How else could I assess the true level of service we offer our passengers?" Helena Andrade, at 72 years old, was the founder and main shareholder of Voazul Airlines, one of the largest in the country. She had started the company in 1987 with just one leased plane and a dream of democratizing air travel in Brazil. Over 3 decades, she built an aviation empire but never lost the habit of traveling anonymously on her own flights to personally verify the quality of the service provided. "You know, Carlos," she continued, still in a soft but didactic tone, "today I witnessed something that deeply concerns me. I saw passengers being treated differently based solely on their appearance. I saw an employee suggest someone change class for no valid technical reason. This is not what we built together in this company." The silence in the cabin was absolute. All the passengers could hear every word, and many were visibly embarrassed. The arrogant executive had shrunk so much in his seat that he seemed to want to disappear completely. "But also," Helena continued, "I saw a competent technical team solve a problem quickly when they had the correct information. I saw dedicated professionals working under pressure to ensure everyone's safety. That makes me proud." She then turned to Mariana, who was still standing beside her. "Dear, are you new to the company?" "Yes, Ms. Elena." 3 months. "And why did you choose to work in aviation?" Because I always dreamed of providing special experiences for people. I wanted to be part of something that connected families, that helped people fulfill dreams. Helena smiled warmly. That's exactly the spirit we're looking for. You just need to remember that every passenger has a story, has dreams, has dignity. The 70-year-old woman in first class might be using her life savings to visit a grandchild born far away. The man in simple clothes might be a brilliant professor going to present a scientific discovery. We never know. The transformation in everyone's behavior was remarkable. Passengers who had previously whispered malicious comments now avoided eye contact, clearly embarrassed. Some discreetly tried to strike up conversations with other passengers they had ignored before. The arrogant executive finally mustered enough courage to approach. His hands still trembled as he stood beside Helena's seat. Ms. Andrade, his voice was almost a whisper, I behaved deplorably. I have no excuses. I'm truly sorry. Helena observed him for a moment before responding, What's your name? Ricardo Mendez. Ricardo, may I ask you a question? What do you do professionally? I'm a marketing director for a multinational company. And when you present campaigns to your clients, do you segment your target audience based only on appearance? Ricardo looked confused. No, of course not. We analyze behaviors, needs, values. Exactly. So why do you judge people in real life just by the clothes they wear or their age? The question hung in the air like a lesson that all those present would carry for life. When the plane finally landed in Rio de Janeiro, Helena was the last to disembark. Before leaving, she addressed the crew one last time. Carlos, I want you to organize a training on hospitality and customer respect for the entire cabin crew. And Mariana, she turned to the young flight attendant, I want you to participate in developing that training. Your experience today will be valuable in teaching others. I would be honored, Ms. Helena. And one last thing, Helena smiled. Next time you see a simple old woman boarding first class, remember, she might have built the company that pays your salaries. Upon disembarking, Helena said goodbye to a few passengers who had approached to greet her. The executive Ricardo was among them. Ms. Andrade, he said, I learned a lesson today that I will carry forever. Thank you. Ricardo, we all judge sometimes. The important thing is to learn and grow. Have a good trip. As she walked through the airport, I watched Helena Andrade disappear into the crowd, returning to the anonymity she so valued. Her faded floral bag and navy blue cardigan no longer drew attention. She was once again just a simple old woman in the crowd. But everyone on Flight 4521 that day learned a lesson they would never forget. Never judge a book by its cover, because you might be looking at the person who wrote the entire story. From that day on, whenever I see someone being treated with disdain because of their appearance, I remember Helena Andrade and how a lesson in humility and respect can transform not just a flight, but the life perspective of dozens of people. Because in the end, true class isn't in the price of the ticket or the elegance of the clothes. It's in how we treat each other, especially when we think no one is looking. And Helena Andrade was always looking.